I'll do it again. Good evening, everyone, and welcome. We're going to be led in the Pledge of Allegiance by Mr. Lamar.
Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Please remain standing for a moment of silence. Okay.
Thank you. Roll call, Ms. Clerk.
Mr. Duray?
Here.
Ms. Green? Here. Mr. Howard? Mr. Lamar?
Here.
Mr. Levenstein?
Here.
Ms. Mineo?
Here.
Mr. Straight-Iron?
Here.
Mr. Walker?
I'm going to turn this over to our superintendent, Dr. Manning Campbell.
Good evening, everyone. Tonight, Ms. Lane, principal of Heritage Middle School, will be doing a presentation about her school. Thank you.
Good evening, Madam President, Dr. Campbell, members of the Cabinet, and members of the Board of Education. Thank you so much for the opportunity to shine a spotlight on our scholars. This evening, I will be shining a spotlight on the Heritage Music Department, especially the upcoming musical that we have. Music education, how do I press the button? Music education and theater is so important for our scholars. Being involved in theater and music helps students build a strong sense of self and identity and learning among their peers. I just put a couple quotes up there. I won't read them all to you, but just a few things. Learn to improve work, kids stay engaged in school, success in society, or just a few things that music education is important. Also, again, the theater, and I'll talk a little bit more about that. For the past several years, Miss Rebecca Kleina has run the theater program at Heritage. I can't even express what an amazing job she does. And if you know Heritage Building, we don't have an auditorium. So we have a little stage in the cafeteria and we have a big stage in the gym, which isn't always the greatest. But when you come to our play, you'll see she does a really great job with the lighting and the curtains. She does a really beautiful job. Not only does she do an amazing job, but that she gives our students a great opportunity to see the ins and outs of a musical production. They are able to be involved in the performance, the design, the sets, costumes, and basically run the show. They're really cute on the night of the show. They have their little headsets on and they're running around. In addition to that, we do have band, chorus, and orchestra, and our students get to participate in 2 concerts a year, and those are some of the events that they participate. So we really enjoy highlighting our scholars and their musical abilities. So here's some of the behind the scenes. The art department got involved in this as well. So you can see some of our students painting some backdrops, and they build everything as well. So they work with the technology department and some of our other teachers to build the sets. They design them. There's not a picture, but they started working on costumes for the kids, so they're really cute. And it's nice to have all the students involved with, every aspect of the production. So some of the musicals we have done so far over the years. This year will be Lion King Jr. We've done High School Musical Jr., Shrek Jr., and the MTV 80s Review. The adults really liked that. I'm not sure if the kids thought that was as great as we thought it was, but they did a really cute job of that. So here's the sneak peek of the upcoming Lion King Jr., as well as a couple clips from past performances.
learn how to act and sing in front of an audience.
We also get to help with hair and makeup.
Many students were involved in painting and building sets.
Hey now, you're an all-star, get your game on, go play. Hey now, you're a rock star, get the show on, get paid. Only shooting stars. Let your freak fly away.
My what?
Let your freak fly. Never take it down, never take it down. Raise it way up high. Let your freak flag fly.
It means no worries for the rest of your day.
Thank you very much for your time, and we hope to see you at the performance. Will be on April 28th and 29th at the school. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Lane. Next, we have Ms. Roaring, who is going to present the budget as she's getting set up. She will be followed by Assistant Superintendents Dr. Farrell and Mrs. Moriarty for tonight's presentation.
Thank you, Dr. Campbell. So we've been talking over the last few weeks about the process that we're using to build this year's budget, as well as what our priorities and goals are in doing so. So if we can start with slide 7, we're going to talk about where we are in the process. We have completed our initial staffing projection. We have finalized what's going to be paid with the foundation aid set-asides that we've been talking about, the high-impact tutoring, which is proposed to be new for fiscal '24, community schools set-aside, which is continuing, contract for excellence set-aside, which is also continuing, and the last year of the American Rescue Plan spending. We've also shared out some of the mandated expenses that drive our total budget. It includes tuition, special education programming, testing, insurance, custodial and maintenance of our buildings, contractual salary increases, audit services, and instructional materials for our students. Some required budget increases for fiscal '24 include contractual salaries, increase in health insurance, tuition rate increases that we see, retirement system contributions, insurance premiums, and transportation. Some of the expense drivers for next year's budget include personnel, health insurance premiums, employer contribution rates, transportation, funding for Ed Law 2D compliance, cybersecurity, and state ed reporting, which is part of our data and technology department, increasing in out-of-district tuition for exceptional learner placements as well as charter school students, and our pre-K support. When we look at some of the budget increases, these are the categories with the largest increases or decreases across the budget. You'll see in here we have an increase in salaries and employee benefits. We actually have a decrease next year in our debt service. And then we also have an increase in our maintenance. That includes some of the requests from the buildings for repairs and also health and safety replacements in their buildings and playgrounds. This is next year's estimated revenue at this time. We're still waiting for the state budget to be finalized, but at this time we are anticipating about a $27 million increase year over year in revenue, and that is largely attributable to the increase in foundation aid. That increase in foundation aid does include the set-aside for high-impact tutoring. When we look at our foundation aid, we have 3 categories of restricted funds within our foundation aid. The first one is Contract for Excellence, which is a set-aside. It's $9.3 million. C4E was enacted back in 2007-8, and our allocation has remained constant from 2012 to since 2012-13. This year, we're going to be realigning to more closely fit into the 4 areas noted below, which include time on task, middle school and high school restructuring, full-day pre-K and kindergarten, as well as model programs for our E&L learners. We will be continuing 23 E&L teachers in this program. We also will be continuing 10 secondary assistant principals, 8 secondary guidance counselors, and we will be repurposing positions for 4 CTE middle positions. We will also be continuing in time on task category 4 instructional technology facilitators, 6 positions that will support our academic intervention services for students. And in the full day K or pre-K, we are including 5 pre-K teachers, 21 pre-K teaching assistants, and transportation. Our next set aside is community schools. This set aside is $837,000. For next year, we're going to continue to support 2 school psychologists and 3 school social workers. And for next year, we will have 4 parent liaisons. When we look at our high impact tutoring, this is the new set aside category pending final approval in the state budget. It is required to be focused on assisting students in grades 3 through 8. They will receive additional instruction time that's customized to their individual needs. Preliminary plans are to offer tutoring on Saturdays and during school breaks as academic camps, and the funds will also be used to support instructional supplies and transportation costs associated with these additional learning opportunities. We also have our final year of one-time federal funds in the American Recovery Plan. They expire in September of 2024. In the next school year, 23-24, these funds will support 79 positions listed here. They will also support transportation costs, including those for after-school programming, substitute teacher expenses, technology purchases, SEL supports, or social emotional learning that includes staff, MTISS, and Panorama, as well as security for our schools.
Board members, does anybody have any questions on that part? Yes, Mr. Stronach.
When was this information put up on the agenda for the public and the board to see?
Dr. Campbell?
It was given to me earlier today to go up.
I believe it's not proper practice to put something like this up on right before the meeting because we have no time to review this. We're probably 2 meetings away from voting on the budget, and we just received this information. So if it could possibly be on the next agenda on the Friday that the agenda comes out, all the attachments, that would be great. I do have some other questions unless there's somebody else.
I'll get back to you, Mr. Stronach, because I agree with you. We really need to study this, and it came out a little bit late. Yes, Mr. Levinson.
So the one of the things that struck me is middle school and high school restructuring, and I was wondering if there's any kind of plan or what direction that might be going to.
So this set aside has been in place for quite some time. It was originally established back in 2007 and 8. So the plans would have been put in place earlier on in the inception of that set aside. We're continuing the middle and high school structuring that has been put in place.
Mr. Stronach, back to you.
So on that same topic, is the proposal to add 10 more secondary assistant principals than what we have right now?
No, though it's a continuation of 10 existing assistant principals.
So where are the additional education pieces to this budget? How many more educators will we have so that we can have smaller class sizes?
So we have pretty small class sizes in the majority of our classrooms, and that's something that we are analyzing. And so we are also looking at how we are utilizing appropriate numbers for grade bands because we do have classes that are running way below what we can fiscally continue to do with our budget because we have very low numbers in some of our courses. And so that's something that we're looking at in terms of classes that are overcrowded. We, to my knowledge, do not have any of those circumstances in our district.
So currently, we have teaching assistants that are supposed to be helping, I believe, pre-K to grade 1. Is that correct? Not higher than grade 1?
We have teaching assistants, really K-12. It depends on the profile of the classes that we have. So we do have mandated services for pre-K, K-1.
So what I'm hearing is that there are a lot of teaching assistants that are being taken out of those classrooms to cover other classes that are not being filled by absences or being used as substitutes. That's the case all across the district.
So I'm not sure about the case all across the district or where you're receiving your information from, but teaching assistants do have an opportunity to sub for an additional rate if they are interested, but we ensure that we have appropriate coverage for our classes.
The whole purpose of having the teaching assistants in the lower grades was to make sure that by the time they got to third grade, they would be on reading level or above. So we're defeating the purpose of having the teaching assistants at that level if we're using them as substitutes throughout other programs. So does this budget address the need to make sure we don't have to take teaching assistants out of those grades for other situations such as substitutes?
So I'm not sure if I was clear. So there are instances where we cannot find substitutes, but we are allotted opportunities if a teaching assistant would like to earn additional funding and we can secure the classes, because sometimes in some instances, perhaps there's a child who does have a one-to-one, and that child may not be in school, and that teaching assistant could be utilized in another capacity. So that's not an everyday occurrence or pervasive across the district. I am not sure where you're receiving that information from, but if you could share it with me so that I would be able to address it.
Wouldn't there be a record at the district level of how many teaching assistants were reassigned each day, and that would be reported to the district?
Absolutely, but I'd be more interested in the information that you have, because maybe you have different information that I have, and I want to be able to have factual information for you.
Well, wouldn't you have the factual information?
Okay.
I just don't understand.
I do, but some of what you're saying is not the information that I have. So I want to make sure that I can collaborate and to maybe educate you in terms of what you're being presented.
Does anybody else have a question? Because I do. Go ahead, Mr. Lamar, you can go ahead of me.
I had mentioned this previously, but I continue to be concerned about the fact that there's so many positions that are being funded with one-time funds, with expiring funds. I think it's an irresponsible way to manage any kind of operation, because unless you're planning on all these people just going away, there has to be a financial solution to it. And I think we'd be better served finding ongoing funds to cover these positions and use the expiring funds for one-time purchases.
Thank you, Mr. Lamar. I want to reiterate what you just said, that putting a lot of ENL teachers in that category, I think, is a dangerous thing. I also want to ask a question about page 18, the high-impact tutoring. We have not seen whether Saturday or break school has been effective for in grades 3 through 8. We've seen attendance somewhat, but I haven't seen any academic data on learning improvement on scores. So I'm wondering if we're putting money in high-impact tutoring and we're putting into a program that we haven't seen the data, maybe you've seen the data, but we haven't seen the data, is that the way to go? So I'm just asking to think about that. Thank you. Does anybody else have any questions before we move on? Thank you.
Good evening, everyone. This evening, Dr. Farrell and I will be presenting the general fund supports for curriculum and instruction. Next year, we anticipate looking at the work that we do differently. So Dr. Farrell and I will be reorganizing how we align our work, and I will be the assistant superintendent focusing on curriculum instruction and assessment, specifically around curriculum development, monitoring instructional practices, local and state assessments, and extended year programs.
I, however, will be functioning specifically in building operations, supervision of guidance, athletics, fine and performing arts, capacity building for administration, and support for the implementation of the instructional practices. You need to think of us as Thing 1 and Thing 2.
If you like Dr. Seuss. I guess we do.
Our division organization, it's in different brackets: pre-K, K-5, K-8, 6-8, and 9-12. And yes, K-8 and 6-8 do overlap in many instances.
Our division is organized with 10 content area directors. Some of the work that they do, which is definitely not limited to this, is that they help select supplemental resources, they design assessments, they design professional development based on the student data, what the student data shows us, where the area of need is. They do side-by-side coaching in the classroom, and these are content area directors.
Instructional opportunities for our students fall into 3 broad categories. We provide individualized instruction via academic intervention services and, of course, for our exceptional learners. We have accelerated learning programs and opportunities for students who choose to challenge and enhance their learning. And we have district programs to address language acquisition needs for our English language learners. Of those 3 broad categories, students are able to enroll in advanced placement courses for college coursework to enrich their long-range academic goals. Our career and technical education programs provide students with credentials to enter the world of work, as well as earn technical certifications and college credits. And our broader categories in our secondary programs of the Big Picture program, Pathways in Technology Early College program, commonly called PTEC, and the Marist College Early program also exist and provide opportunities for our learners.
In the next school year, the 23-24 school year, we will be looking to pilot a new math program. Currently, we use Go Math at the elementary level and illustrative math in the secondary. Go Math will not be aligned with the next gen standards, so we've begun our search for a new program following policy 5411 and recommending a program to the superintendent. With her approval, we will move forward with a committee to implement and design a pilot. Some of the things that we'll be looking for in the new program are alignment to the next gen standards, supports for multilingual learners, and of course, high rigor. As we all know, literacy is the foundation of all learning, and our funds support our core curriculum in grades K through 6, which provides teachers with a framework, read aloud text, core text, student exemplars, and word study notebooks and writer's notebooks for our students. Additionally, we have the 100-book challenge, which you've heard lots about multiple times. We have the technology that goes along with that. This is a live dashboard, data dashboard, that helps us to monitor student progress, literacy progress. It also provides teachers with access to the resources and to books virtually. Professional development is a component of every program implementation. This is embedded professional development, one-on-one coaching, side-by-side in the classroom. Additionally, we have a leadership learning series so that the administrators are also trained and on point with our program implementation. In grades K through 5, we have our AIS services for students. This this is under review this year to really look at the students that we're serving and what their needs are, and do we have enough teachers in the right areas. So currently we're providing academic intervention services in reading and math. Highlighted in the reading skills are the skills that you see there, as well as the math. Students receive service in groups of 3 to 5 students for 30 minutes 3 times a week.
In grades 6, 7, and 8, students also receive in-school academic intervention services in English language arts and math. They utilize a pull-out as well as a push-in model. There's instructional software support also for our students. We use ARC, as we said, the reading program literacy software, Newsella, which provides an opportunity for our students to read live news content and help them make judgments and assess what's happening in the world. And we use iReady and Castle Learning. Castle Learning supports instruction in all academic areas. Our core content staff, beginning next year, will increase their collaboration to enhance learning opportunities for students in the content areas. Our students who struggle most with reading also struggle with reading in their content, such as our humanities and social studies courses. We are aligning our ELA and social studies work, as well as our math and our science work, so that students receive the support in the content and continue to flourish. On our secondary level, grades 9 through 12, we have 3 basic models for our academic intervention support. We maintain a 6-period assignment for students in need of additional work in particular content or for credit recovery. We have Power Hour Wednesday during the school day for students who need an additional instruction period to master core content and achieve success on the Regents exams. And we maintain an academic schedule that reflects credit recovery and academic intervention for all students in all classes.
We support our English language learners, our ELs, from the point of entry at registration all the way into the classroom, depending on which program they're enrolled in, ENL, bilingual, or dual language. We offer continuing supports and after-school program, Saturday programs for our K-8 learners. We have after-school program and homework help and Regents Prep at the secondary, as well as ENL offerings in night school. For parents, we have our Parent University, as well as 2 district-wide meetings annually, and each building provides 1 parent meeting for our English language learner families once a year. To date, 18% of our students are ELs. That as of March 10th, that actual number is 1,917 of our students are identified as ELs. 50% of our ELs are newcomers, which means that they have been in a U.S. school for 0 to 3 years. So 1,000 of the 1,900 I previously had mentioned are newcomers. Additionally, 2% of our students are former ELs. That means that they have tested to the commanding proficiency. However, they still receive 2 years of ENL services and test accommodations. 2% equals 220 of our students. The total Newburgh students receiving services is 20%, which is 2,200 of our students. The chart below is from the New York State Ed Data website. It identifies and highlights our EL enrollment by grade. So you can see, it's a little hard to see here, but you can see what the enrollment has been. We've had a high enrollment this year. The next 2 slides talk predominantly about the same information I showed there. However, important to note here are these are our our English language learner, new entrants this year. If you go down to the blue at the bottom of the slide, at the end of January, we had tested 537 students, newcomer students this year. Of those 537, 384 were identified as an out. 27 of the students had transferred into the district from other New York State schools, but they are also newcomers.
Skip.
Yeah, this just highlights the same information in another way.
School is all about academics, but it's also about enrichment. This slide presents some of the activities that we provide for our students that give them the opportunity to enjoy contact with their peers in a less formal setting. Our college and career technical education program is part of our construction project, and you have all heard about that extensively, about the programs that will be offered here. This slide presents the array of current programs that we support and the starting salary for entry-level work in the certification programs in those areas. As you can see, our students who complete these programs have the opportunity to enter into well-paying careers. Last but not least, our field trips. Well, not last, but close to last, our field trips. Our students have been able to engage in 168 field trips to date this year that enrich their learning opportunities and stimulate their interest in particular academic areas. All of our field trips are aligned to curriculum. And extracurricular, we currently maintain 60 assorted club activities. Our fine and performing arts, a sampling of the array of activities in which our students are engaged are listed. And we have 31 teams that are engaged in interscholastic athletic activities. And I'm very happy to have our flag football girls. We work very, very hard to maintain equity for our girls as well as our boys in our sports activities and in all of our activities.
That concludes our presentation this evening.
Board members, do you have any questions on curriculum and instruction? I'm going to say this, that was a lot of information. I have a million questions, but I'm not going to ask them now because it was too much without me being prepared. So, Mr. Stridarn.
What is the average size of an L class? If we have 1,900 Ls in the district, what's the typical size for an Ls class?
So it depends on the service that they're receiving. If it's ENL service, if it's push in or push out, pull out. A bilingual class typically is the average class size is about 25 for the dual language as well.
And does that class have an assistant, or is it just 25 and then one teacher?
Typically, they do not have a teaching assistant.
That's a large size, especially if they're new students. So the other question I have is, when will the board see the teacher feedback on the ARC reading program?
The literacy audit is concluding, I believe, tomorrow. I believe there's a presentation scheduled in April at a board meeting.
Will that be also available to the public?
I suspect so, yeah.
Okay, thank you.
Board members, any other questions on curriculum and instruction? Thank you.
Thank you, Madam President. That concludes my items for this section.
Thank you. We're going to do, we're now at the section of the agenda for public discussion and comments on agenda items. So I do have someone signed up, Migdalia Moore. Good evening.
Hello, good evening. I would like to read a letter. I'm a school social worker who is new in the district. I started in January 2022. On March 1st, 2023, I reached my breaking point and had to leave work for half a day because I was an emotional wreck. I had to go to urgent care and was given a doctor's note to stay home the rest of the week to get my thoughts together so I can figure out what I would do next. As I sat home, I struggled with whether I should resign effective immediately or try to hang in there at least until June so that it does not impact the children. By Friday, emotionally, I was better. On Saturday, I was back to my old self, and Sunday, I decided to go back to work on Monday. However, the thought of returning to work started creating anxiety. I asked myself, why am I having such a hard time at this place? Why is this so challenging for me? I have dealt with difficult people before. I'm used to heavy workloads and multitasking. I used to be a union delegate, so I can handle retaliation and pressure. What is going on here? After speaking to a trusted professional, it was brought to my attention that I was being triggered. It finally made sense. I felt like I was back in an abusive relationship. I was being gaslighted. I was being made to feel it was wrong of me to have a voice. I was being treated as if my thoughts did not matter and I was not valued. I could not help but think about the parent who told me it takes her 15 minutes to get her daughter out of the car because she does not want to go to school, or the parent that told me their child has stomach aches every day and does not want to go to school. I'm an adult who knows all the tools to self-regulate emotionally, and I also have the privilege of walking away from a situation when I need a time out. What about the students who have yet to master self-regulation tools and cannot just walk away? They just keep getting triggered and triggered. I apologize, I do not have any data to prove my theory, but I encourage you to explore how this plays a role in the many disciplinary or attendance issues this district experiences. I have no problem with doing work. I will go above and beyond to get things done for the best interests of the children. There have been many times when I have gone without a lunch break or stayed after hours uncompensated for the best interests of the children, and I never complained, nor am I complaining now because I would do it again if I have to. My problem is when my integrity is challenged, when I feel I am being disrespected, when I feel things are being done unfairly, and when I feel like I am expected just to be seen and not heard. I live by the following core values: integrity, respect, self-determination, and fairness. When any of these are challenged, the advocate in me rises up and I stand up for what is right. Not only is it my personal conviction, but it's also my professional ethical obligation as a New York State licensed professional. However, it is challenging to stand up for what is right in this district because the minute you say something that is not agreed with, you become a target for bullying and harassment. I remember listening to a meeting and hearing Ed Forget say, not verbatim, but in paraphrase, "What are we missing? All this money being invested on all these initiatives and still no improvement." I have to say the district has a lot of good initiatives and resources, but in my opinion, what is missing is the investment in social capital. Stop investing in programs and start investing in the people. Start investing in building meaningful relationships with staff, students, and families. Just for a second, stop looking at numbers and dollar signs and start looking at people. Are some areas getting it right? Yes. Are some great things happening in Newburgh? Yes. But I'm a social worker, and my focus is always on the marginalized groups, the ones who get cast out and left behind, the ones who are not included in the conversations, the ones who are at the bottom of the list in your numbers. It's easy to throw up your hands and walk away from conflict, but then what happens to the rest of the individuals who are suffering in silence and are left behind? I was offered a transfer, but culture and climate are not just an individual building issue. It is a district-wide issue, as expressed by many of my colleagues who are too afraid to speak up. I was told by a colleague, "Don't let it get to you, just think about your paycheck." But I am not here for the money. I'm here to do my job, and if I can't do my job, then there's no purpose for me to be here. I was also suggested to leave because no job is worth your mental health. This I do agree with. But the most challenging part of that is feeling like I abandoned the children.
Ms. Moore, I'm sorry, it's 5 minutes. Thank you. Would anyone else like to address the board on agenda items? Yes. On agenda items, Mr. Harvey?
Yes, most of you know me. I'm Ray Harvey. I met this young lady the other night, and what she was saying really, affected me. However, if I stay, it would be a disservice because I would not be able to give them, because this really, what they need because of me to stay required me to shut off my emotions, become numb. Having emotions and ability to feel empathy and compassion make me great at my job. Therefore, after much consideration, the best thing I can do for them is to have the confidence to share my story and hope that someone is encouraged and empowered to do the same. My hope is that different conversations begin to happen so that real changes can take place. I appreciate the opportunity I was granted. I'm grateful for the connections that I have made. Unfortunately, this is where my journey comes to an end. I apologize for any inconvenience this has brought. Please accept my resignation effective immediately. I still got a few minutes, so I want to speak on this letter and what this means and why I'm so emotional. Because every board meeting, we stand here and we talk about staff and the kids and what's best for the kids. But when we have staff who's afraid to come forth and complain and put in complaints because of retaliation, then we need to look at our policies and make sure that people would be able to speak their mind without fear of them losing their job or they getting reassigned to somewhere else. And because that's a disservice to not just the staff, but to the young folks that they are dedicated their life to. So it's very important for us to understand that. Because I had a meeting today in Cornwall, and the first thing out of the superintendent's mouth was, you know where you at. Because it had to do with a young black African-American man getting called outside of his name, and they telling me, what I got out of that was, you in Cornwall, learn to live with that. Where are we at in education? And what should I have done with that? Right? So we have to do better. We have to do better for all kids in these schools and give our staff so that they can feel safe and can speak out against other staff members when they see them do wrong, right? And don't have to worry about them, bless you, losing your job or whatever is going on. This stuff is personal to me because I was one of them kids that without a teacher seeing something in me, I wouldn't be standing in front of you today. And that's the God honest truth. So this is personal to me, right? When I heard great teachers, and then when she put in this letter, somebody from the staff, from the board, somebody should have reached out to her. Somebody should have said, why? Why are you leaving us? Because if you look at her evaluation and she got all great evaluation, then what is it? How can we change? How can we keep great staff here? When we're talking about hiring minority staff members, but minority staff members is losing, and we ain't trying to figure out why they leaving, then something is wrong. And we need to look at that and fix that. Because it ain't no need to hire people if we can't retain the people that we already have. Thank you.
Does anybody else want to address the board on agenda items? Go ahead. Hi.
Hello, my name is Deb Boulay. I live in the town of Newburgh, and I'm a retired teacher of 16 plus years in Newburgh, July 1st, 2022. My heart goes out to you. Please know for what it's worth that you are not alone, that this is a systemic problem, in my opinion, in this district, and has been for the 16 years that I was employed here. And until the day comes when you all decide to not sink and settle, and instead you decide to rise and lead, this problem will exist. It's not okay. Massaging the truth, massaging the data to have a narrative that makes it look as though things are a particular way is not okay anymore. So I encourage you to stop. Change your frames, change your glasses, and look at it from a different perspective. There is nothing to hide. There is nothing to protect. We've got to be real. And the time is now.
We have one person signed up for non-agenda items, and that's Mr. Harvey.
No, I'm good.
Okay. Would anybody else like to address the board on non-agenda items, please?
Good afternoon. My name is Anthony Gilmeyer. I'm addressing the superintendent of schools and the Board of Education. I'm reading this for entry into the official record of this board meeting because I have been ignored by the superintendent of schools and Board of Education for almost 30 days. This matter is of utmost importance to my son and over 5,000 6th to 12th grade students in this district. Given the short amount of time I have here, I'm summarizing the following. The district grading policy is not being followed. The policy 5502, dated June 14th of 22, describes different components of the grade and fails to mention another measurement being used in the calculating grades. I learned the report card grading includes a credit component and a quality points metric that impacts the final grade. Also, there's no mention of this calculation or the impact in the report card sent to parents and available on the parent portal. This hidden method of calculating report card grades has a negative impact on grades. In the case of my son's first semester report card, it reduces his grade 1.4 points. This may not seem like a lot, but makes a 0.1 grade difference in the college-style 4-point grading system. That small amount could make the difference in meeting eligibility requirements for a college. The district needs to regrade all affected students and update the policy to be clear on how reports are being graded. This is akin to creating a new scoring rule after the Super Bowl starts. For transparency, I started the long, winding escalation process at NFA on December 2nd, 2022, and then to the district office on January 19th, 2023. At this meeting, I shared my concerns and was told by those in attendance that the grading policy was being followed accurately. I respectfully disagreed and shared my intention to escalate this matter further. I asked those in attendance to raise my concerns to the superintendent of schools quickly, since second semester report cards were soon to be printed. The first two semester report cards are vital for the college application process for high school seniors like my son. I continued the escalation to the superintendent and the Board of Ed on January 29, 2023 via email. I sent the same email to them again 2 more times, February 10th and February 17th, and didn't receive a response. I called the superintendent's voice office and left a message on her voicemail indicating I needed to speak to her. I received a call from Dr. Farrell on the same day asking why I was calling. I shared with Dr. Farrell that the reason was the escalation of the topic we had discussed on January 19th, 2023. I followed up that call with her by sending the long thread of ignored emails for reference. I am here today as a result of being ignored by those whose responsibility it is to address and fix this. I am here also to bring awareness to the parents of 6th to 12th grade students, especially seniors in this district, that are receiving lower scores than they deserve because the grading policy is not being followed. It is alarming that something as important as grading for over 5,000 students does not rise above common courtesy and decency to respond to 4 emails and a voice message asking for the opportunity to fix this for the benefit of the students. It also is incredibly frustrating and difficult to reconcile this behavior against the stated mission and values of the district. You can't inspire students to become tomorrow's leaders beyond academy field if you don't grade them properly or respond to parents' concerns who want the right grade for their child. The district's vision is blurry when you don't respond to people you want to work with to achieve inclusive excellence. In closing, I ask 2 things. 1, a prompt formal response to this letter with timely follow-up to rectify this quickly. This is to ensure you can send updated records to all the colleges to which our seniors have applied. 2, reflect on your behavior and ask if it has been nurturing, empowering, collaborative, or student-centered for the diverse population of over 5,000 students in grades 6 through 12, and how you can model those values in your response to fixing this issue. Thank you. Respectfully and sincerely, Anthony Gilmeyer.
Would anybody else like to address the board on non-agenda items? Please.
Good evening, everyone. My name is Sade Burks, as you all may know. I'm just here to speak on one thing in particular that it does affect me. I heard about Mrs. Moore's resignation. I know she is a social worker at Gidney Avenue. And just hearing about her resignation really bothered me, because we don't have too many Black or brown social workers in our school, but our special ed classrooms are filled with Black and brown students. How can our students ever know how to get through any emotional behaviors or learn how to deal with the emotional behaviors if they do not see anyone that looks like them and that knows how to relate to them that are from their culture? We talk about diversity in the Newburgh and Large City School District and doing more about diversity, but then we hire staff of diversity and then they have to go through what Mrs. Moore dealt with, and then they either get frustrated and quit, or they stay and they have to take the beating for whatever reason. Maybe they stay for their check because a lot of people need their jobs. That's why they're working. But why do you have to stay and go through mental abuse just so you can have a check? And then a lot of them stay because they don't want to leave because of the children. So they're not really staying for the check. They're staying because they don't want to leave for the children. I myself, when my son was placed in his program for special education, I didn't want to send him to the school that they placed him in because I did not hear a lot of good things about the school. But when I heard that who his social worker was, Miss McCullough, and I found out that his aunt would be working in the nurse's office, and I found out that there were a handful of Black teachers and educators there that are on his support team, that is what made me confident in sending my son to the school. Believe me, it is not the class. But knowing that he has such a great support system outside of that classroom, and he can go to these teachers and he sees someone that looks like him and that looks like his mother, and that is not judging him by the color of her skin or by where he comes from or because he's just another Black kid in special education, that y'all just want to throw on masks instead of giving the services that he needs. That helped me to make my decision because I was confident in the team that was going to be there outside of the classroom. Let me make this clear. Because if it was left up to the classroom, I would have took him out a long time ago. But the fact that he can go out and see Miss McCullough and see other people there that are of color gives me confidence and gives me hope. I think it's a shame that people of color that work in this district are quitting because of the bullying and interrogation that they are receiving from their coworkers and employees. What are we teaching our children? Don't we speak about bullying? What are we teaching them? If you speak up and speak your mind that you're going to be bullied and targeted to the point where you can't take it no more? I've been there. I've dealt with this last year, fighting for my son's services and fighting to get him services. In the meantime, dealing with my father's death. And you know what happened to me? I went to the mental institution. I checked myself in there because I was so frustrated through grieving my father's death and fighting with the school system to get my son's services. Meanwhile, I applied in January, didn't get a special ed meeting till May. The kindergarten year was over and he spent half of his time in the kindergarten class. And then when they switched him, like I said, I wasn't satisfied with the school, but because I knew there was people of color there that would be able to know how to handle a young Black male of color, it made me confident in sending him. Shame on you, Newburgh and Large City School District, for not standing up for your employees. Thank you.
Would anybody else like to address the board on non-agenda items? Thank you. Thank you. We're going to move on. Okay. Be it resolved that the Board of Education hereby recesses into executive session for the following purpose: matter made confidential under FERPA, employment history of particular individuals, employment history of particular corporations, matters leading to the employment of particular individuals, the review of program and placement of students with disabilities, collective bargaining under the Taylor Law, and to obtain advice from legal counsel. I'd like to entertain a motion, please. Roll call.
Ms. Green? Yes. Mr. Lamar?
Yes.
Mr. Levinstein?
Yes.
Ms. Mineo?
Yes.
Mr. Straight Iron?
Yes.
Mr. DeRay?
Yes.
We'll be back in about an hour. I'm going to turn this over to our Superintendent of Schools, Dr. Manning Campbell.
Okay, thank you so much. Thank you, Madam President. Before my items, Dr. Farah will be speaking about NFA Midtown to address questions previously brought forth by the Board of Education.
Thank you, Dr. Campbell. There were a number of questions that were raised about our Midtown campus and the programs. The first question addressed the need for one additional full-time security guard that can handle physical encounters on a daily basis. Currently, there are 2 1.0 full-time security staff. We have requested lunch coverage for security so that when security leaves for staff lunch, the 2 1.0 FTE ratio is maintained. Currently, there is not sufficient security staff for that assignment. Second question, at least one ABA behaviorist that can work with students on a daily basis that can identify each student's needs and create a plan of action to allow each student to succeed is needed. ABA is a very specific behavior management system generally used for identified special education students with severe communication and or autistic display. This is not the population at that program. Number 3, AIS staff should be present on a daily basis to assist with students who are so far behind in reading and math they are doomed to fail most of the courses they are currently enrolled in. We have students with third grade reading levels in Regents level courses, and they have never passed the prerequisite courses for these classes. My response, how were reading levels identified? These are not transcript items, and there is no reading specialist working with these students. AIS services for content area acquisition occurred during daily instruction as part of credit recovery. Comment and question 4. 1 food and 1 beverage vending machine similar to the ones at the other high school campuses are needed. Vending machines were discussed with food service when the building opened. The costs of the machines, as well as inadequate electric service, preclude their use. Ms. Lazarski has expressed the belief that the volume of activity at the machines would not be sufficient to justify their costs and maintenance of fresh food supply at this site. Number 5, a portable food heating table so that food that is delivered stays hot. The students are served cold food and are prevented from having it heated up in a microwave. Our students deserve hot meals. I agree, our students deserve hot meals. However, food service does not have a license to operate in the building, and as such, Ms. Lazarski has indicated that no heating table or microwave could be used to warm student foods. Both have been requested for the program previously as potential solutions to cold, hot food and warm, cold food. Basketballs, pull-up bars, and other sports equipment. The gym, in quotes, a former kindergarten class, has a cardboard box as a basketball hoop, and the students are using a very old volleyball to play with. There is a brand new basketball at the school, and more can be purchased, especially since an outdoor hoop was installed last Friday.
And that was, this draft was written 2 weeks ago, so it's been in existence for a while. A student made the box hoop for indoor use and is quite proud of his hoop. It has served its purpose well. The space identified the gym was selected by the former principal as far enough away from the main corridor to prevent noise pollution. It is, however, small in size and has 5 to 6 pieces of appropriate equipment as well as free weights. If the district chooses to use this space as an alternate program moving forward next year, it is my suggestion that the physical education activities be moved to the current faculty room location. That space is a double classroom and more accommodating to gym activities. The faculty room could be moved to the physical education space, which also has a private bathroom and sink, solving another problem that exists, a staff bathroom. Field trips to any privately owned gym facility might be on an intermittent basis, should the district be able to afford this activity. Transportation, parental permission, and acknowledgement that such a field trip would impact other class programming during the instructional day must be given consideration. However, intermittent field trips of such type can and will be considered. Lastly, students are permitted to use Delano Hitch Park with parental permission for class activities. They may also run, jog, or walk in the neighborhood, as do the West Street School students. They must be accompanied by the instructor and an additional staff member for security purposes. Supplies. There is a great need for all types of everyday school supplies. There have been no requests for additional school supplies for either students or staff. C&I, Curriculum and Instruction, will immediately provide whatever supplies are necessary. Number 8, lab supplies for the science room. Currently, the students are working on, quote, paper labs. The district can supply some robotics equipment that is used during the summer programs. There is a great need for coding and modern science lessons. The science program has been fully equipped for instruction in the class offered, living environment. Mr. Romano, our science director, has funded lab equipment, text, review material, and all necessary apparatus for the class, and has worked with the instructor diligently to support lesson planning and instructional activities. Hands-on lab activity material is available in the class for use. It must be noted that SED, State Education Department, has this winter authorized the use of online digital lab instruction, and that instruction must be infused into the coursework so that students are both familiar with virtual labs for instruction as well as during Regents exams. The use of virtual labs also provides more immediate support for those students who may need to repeat the course during summer school and may have deficient lab hours completed to pass the course. Moving forward, students who wish to take a coding class for either math or science credit may be able to do so, should there be sufficient interest for the class to fill if offered. At this time, it is not offered, as students must pass living environment and earth science to graduate, and none of those students registered have passed these classes previously. However, a coding and electronics class is planned for summer school at the middle school level, non-credit bearing, and for high school students via the Empire program for summer work. Number 9, the school has no real gym, and many of the students have ADHD. The kindergarten room is tiny, and the students have voiced a great need to get their energy out during the school day. Why can't we have a one-time per week field trip to the Maximum Fitness Gym in Newburgh? Some of the students have said they have a basketball court and so many fitness classes that we get them excited to be in the program. We could work out a deal with the gym and get a signed waiver from the school. On good weather days, the gym class could walk across the street and get some fresh air and movement. I know that the gym teacher walks at West in the neighborhood with her class, so this would be a similar solution. Can we have access to the city park right across the street? On good weather days, the gym class could walk across the street and get some fresh air and movement. I know that the gym teacher at West walks the neighborhood with her class. This would be a similar solution. I repeated this question solely because it was raised twice, but that answer has already been provided. Number 10, the ELA teacher suggested a new course for next year in film study. He taught this in Brooklyn and would like to create this new course for his students. A film class ELA elective can be offered should there be sufficient student interest and should students successfully pass required ELA courses. Currently, credit recovery courses are offered. There is, however, no reason that some activities using our existing laptops and software could not be incorporated into the instructional activities of our current English or other classes. Project-based learning as well as innovative, although the use of videographic software is very mainstream. Filming, editing, framing, and scriptwriting activities all complement current instructional work. Thinking outside of the framework would easily support this. Number 11. Students have expressed interest in leaving the program because they want access to cosmetology and ROTC. Can we find a solution for this issue? ROTC would be a wonderful activity for these students. The program does require excellent attendance and academic achievement. I will discuss the potential of incorporating ROTC at Midtown campus into our existing program should our students both have interest and meet the requirements. Cosmetology or other CTE programs are not available currently at Midtown or Cosmetology is planned to be introduced solely to grade 11 or 12 students at West this coming September. And should the program be successful, we may be able to do so at Midtown's second semester next year for grade 11 or 12 students who have completed credit recovery work and can accommodate electives into their schedule. Number 12, after-school clubs. Some of the students do not want to go home when school ends and would like the opportunity to form clubs. Should students wish to form clubs, they should make this request to Mr. Woody, principal, who will assist in finding a staff advisor for the club and submit the necessary paperwork for the club to be approved and for the staff advisor to receive the required stipend for this work. Clubs will also require overtime work for the security staff and facility staff members assigned to Midtown, as well as late bus transportation. If there is an interest, perhaps one day per week, we could have an extended day for club activities. Number 13, we have students with IEPs in this school that are not having their specific IEP needs met by the program as it's currently being implemented. We need more staff at this school to deal with the gaps in the programming. Mr. Baer has reviewed IEP programming and has assured that the caseload for our 1.0 FTE special educator is appropriate and that the required services are provided. I confirmed with a particular parent the other evening at the basketball game that his child has currently begun to receive his services following a meeting with me and Mr. Baer's follow-up with our special teacher. Number 14, the students need a few tables and benches to be able to sit outside the school at the arrival and dismissal of students. Mr. Velez has indicated in the past that the school program was not permitted to use the outdoor space, but as time has progressed and the church has, I believe, determined that we are a manageable bunch, perhaps this can be arranged. We would need some furniture and perhaps one additional security person, perhaps, for the outside activity, since students would also be inside in class or might prefer not to be outside for the lunch break and socializing. Number 15, there is a great need for the sheriff to be present outside the school at the arrival and dismissal of students. To my knowledge, Midtown has had 2 altercations of magnitude at dismissal, one early last fall and one mid-January. Arrival rarely, if ever, presents a problem since students who come in on time come inside immediately and late arrivers ring the bell and do not arrive in clusters. Security is present at dismissal and supervises bus boarding and walkers or pickup, moving students away from the school as fast as possible. The school is located on a public street, and students who do not bus do have the right to leave school property and to talk and walk at less than a trot. If there is any sign of disharmony, Mr. Woody and security separate and move students along. Perhaps a more efficient use of the sheriff's time would be for one or more of the deputies to work with our students to establish relationships, and if needed for security and safety, perhaps one of the larger campuses would be a more effective venue. And last, 16. The old library and office directly next to it are not included in the current lease. They are unoccupied and are connected to the main lobby. Can we negotiate a small modification to the lease to open up 2 more educational spaces in the building? The spaces referenced have asbestos. There has been no abatement in these areas. If there were abatement, a lease modification, then the space could be productively used. But at this time, that cannot be effected. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Farrell. Madam President, I would like to present items 4.1 and 4.2 as consent items for your consideration.
Would any member like to separate out any of these items? I'd like to entertain, yes, sir. Okay. So we'll do 4.1 first. I'd like to entertain a motion on 4.1, please.
So moved.
Questions or discussion on 4.1? Yes, sir.
So the plan that went out to, the message that went out to the public regarding the parental part, there's a meeting coming up where they're going to choose 8 parents, but the timing for the meeting is during work hours. So that excludes any working parents from being part of the shared decision-making. Could that be modified to allow parents at work to be part of the process?
Mr. Forget?
Yes, Mr. Stridiron. It's not the shared decision-making plan that we're doing. We're creating a brand-new strategic plan for the district. So I just want to make sure we're clear on that. Thank you. And Ms. Green also contacted me about that same thing. And Ms. Green and I agreed that we will create surveys and other opportunities for people to at least add their perspective and their thoughts into the design of the plan. They're really feedback sessions. So we will come up with an alternative strategy for those that are working during the day to include their feedback.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Okay. Any other questions? Yes, Mr. Lamar.
Again, on the shared decision-making district team, it says that teachers selected by the Teachers Collective Bargaining Organization president. Can we ensure that every school will be represented in that collection and not just select people that the bargaining group decides to send over?
So the shared decision-making steering team met to determine which of the participants should be there. It is up to the Newburgh Teachers Association bargaining president to select the teachers that will participate on that. We look for a diverse team that represents the students within the district. So we're looking for stakeholders that represent the student population in the district. I can tell you that there will be twice the amount of teachers on that team than there are administrators. As far as can I guarantee there will be a representation from every single building, I can't guarantee that.
Can't we write it and request it that way?
Can I write the...
As it sits now, yes, it goes to the NTA, they make the decision, and they send the people over. Can we, it's not written that we're requesting one from each. Could we make that request so that there's representation from all schools?
I can share your consideration with Ms. Moran.
Any other questions or comments on 4.1, please? Roll call, Ms. Clerk.
Mr. Duray? Ms. Green?
Yes.
Mr. Lamar?
Yes.
Mr. Levinstein?
Yes.
Ms. Mineo?
Yes.
Mr. Straight Iron?
Yes.
Let's move on to item 4.2. I'd like to entertain a motion, please.
So moved.
Questions or discussion on 4.2? Yes, Mr. Stridiron?
So I'm looking at the calendar, I'm noticing that September 15th is not a half-day for Rosh Hashanah. Can you go over the thought processes why that wasn't included?
So we did ask for feedback from the community. We did receive 2 responses asking us to consider a half-day on Friday, September 15th. But we, based on a variety of other requests and the number of half-days that we can have in order to comply with 900 hours and 990 hours, we cannot add another half-day. We have contractual half-days at the end of September. At the end of June for pre-K through 6th grade. We also have a half-day on the budget votes because the budgeting starts in the middle of May. In the middle of the day on the 21st. So we really are limited in the number of half-days we can offer. We are being respectful of that particular holiday in the way we have it designed.
Are there any other questions or comments on this item? Roll call.
Ms. Green?
Yes.
Mr. Lamar?
Yes.
Mr. Levinstein?
Yes.
Ms. Mineo?
Yes.
Mr. Stridiron?
No.
Mr. DeRay?
Thank you, Madam President. That concludes my items.
Thank you, Dr. Manning Campbell. For my section, when we were in policy, we put all these up as first reads so that if there are any questions now, and that's items 5.1 through items 5.14, does any member have any questions or comments on any of those items? Because it's a first read, it's not an adoption yet. So do you have any questions or comments? Mr. Stridiron, I saw you nod.
Yes, I do. On the first one, 5.1, school visits by individual board members, you're changing it from advance notice to 5 days notice of school visits. Can you just explain why you'd need 5 days after a board member has been invited to a school to prepare for something like that?
Mr. Forget, can you help us with that?
Sure. It allows us an opportunity to honor your request, to make sure there are no conflicts within the building, within the events or things like that for the day. I think what you asked, I got a little confused with what you said. First, it was this is in the event you wanted to go and visit, but you're saying you're being invited. So we're just asking that you please give the principal and the administration 5 days notice that you would like to attend. It'll definitely be honored. We've never said no.
So if a board member is invited, that this policy doesn't include that?
It does include that.
And as part of this policy, when a board member is invited or goes to a school, are other board members also able to visit the school?
To join with you to visit the school?
Yes.
Is that what your question is? Yes. It's included in this policy.
I've been on the board for 9 years, and I've never, other than I think one time, had an invitation to a school that another board member has been invited. I've seen all over social media other board members going to schools for the last 9 years, and I've never received an invitation from one of those. So I'm just wondering, I go to Ann Street School, and all of a sudden we get like 15 policies being changed about school board members, and I just 5 days notice. I hope this policy doesn't pass, because I think 5 days is a little too much. I think 2-3 days is probably fine, but I just think it's too much.
Any other comments or questions on these items? Okay. Before I turn this over to board committees, I'm going to make a public announcement for the Newburgh Teachers Center open house. It's on the 30th of March from 2:30 to 5:30. and you're all invited to visit, so please do. Great things are happening at the Newburgh Teacher Center. So we're going to move on to our curriculum instruction. Oh, Ms. Green's gone. Would you speak to curriculum and instruction, Ms. Moriarty?
Sure, Madam President. All the agenda items on the agenda this evening were discussed, as well as we had a presentation from Dr. Morales about world language and services for ELS.
Thank you. From the policy committee, you saw the policies that were talked about. They're all about the board, and we're looking at and going through all the policies, so this was the ones that we were up to this time. Library committee, Mr. Stridiron?
Yes, Madam President. We had our library committee meeting last week, and we had a great presentation by Kelly Grady from Meadow Hill School regarding the programs that she has for the students, and she invited the committee to come to one of her classes to observe some of the great work that's being done in that school for the library. We also had the director's report and updates on the finalization of the construction projects and all the great things that are happening in the Newburgh Library. Thank you.
Thank you. We're going to move on to our Assistant Superintendent for Curriculum and Instruction. Oh.
Yes, yes. Would you like the audit and finance?
Yes, I would. I'm sorry.
Facilities also.
Oh, do them all. Thank you.
Thank you. So, audit and finance met at 5 p.m. tonight, and we discussed all 8 resolutions on tonight's finance agenda, and we also discussed some upcoming requests for proposals. The Facilities Committee met yesterday at 5 p.m. We met with CS Arch Architects, and we discussed the need for construction work because of existing conditions, timetables, proposed solutions, costs, options, project scope, and schedules, and next steps for the following projects: the Heritage Vehicle Circulation Plan, NFA Main Locker Room renovation, NFA Main Elevated Concrete Walk replacement, and the Newburgh Free Library scope of work for phases 1, 2, and 3. We also met with CPL Architects and TPG Construction Management, discussed the status of the capital projects, and also Mr. Velez updated the committee on the NFA window work and kitchen equipment replacement in numerous schools. Thank you.
Thank you, and I apologize.
No problem.
So we're going to move on to our Assistant Superintendent for Curriculum and Instruction, Elementary, Ms. Moriarty.
Thank you, Madam President. Elementary Curriculum and Instruction presents items 7.1 and 7.2 as a consent agenda for your consideration.
Would any member like to separate out any of these items? I'd like to entertain a motion, please. Questions or discussion? Roll call, Ms. Clerk.
Mr. Levinstein?
Yes.
Ms. Mineo?
Yep.
Mr. Stridiron?
Yes.
Mr. DeRay?
Yes.
Mr. Lamar?
Yes.
Thank you, Madam President. That concludes my items.
Thank you, Ms. Moriarty. We're going to move on to our Assistant Superintendent for Curriculum and Instruction, Secondary, Dr. Farrow.
Thank you, Madam President. I'd like to present items 8.1, 8.2, and 8.3 for your consideration.
Would any member like to separate out any of these items? I'd like to entertain a motion, please. Questions or discussion? Roll call, Ms. Clerk.
Ms. Mineo?
Yes.
Mr. Stridiron?
Yes.
Mr. DeRay?
Yes.
Mr. Lamar?
Yes.
Mr. Levinstein?
Yes.
Thank you, Madam President. That concludes my agenda.
Thank you, Dr. Farrell. We're going to move on to our Assistant Superintendent for Exceptional Learners, Mr. Bayer.
Thank you, Madam President. The Exceptional Learner Division has one item, 9.1, recommendations from the CSE and CPSE committees.
I'd like to entertain a motion, please. Questions or discussion? Yes, sir.
Could the board get a running total of how many students' IEPs are changed from the 812s or the 121s to a general education classroom? Is that possible to get something like that, as a running total?
I don't even know who to ask. Let's start with David Shaw.
Is that a request for declassification of students? Is that the point?
Yes.
Sir? Mr. Baer?
Certainly, we can provide that information. We've also been asked to have a exceptional learner committee that's a building committee started up in April, so we will be able to report that information there as well. It won't be a board committee.
Dr. Farrell, please turn your mic off. And any other questions on this item? Roll call, Ms. Clerk.
Mr. Straight Iron?
Yes.
Mr. DeRay?
Yes.
Mr. Lamar?
Yes.
Mr. Levinstein?
Yes.
Ms. Mineo?
Yes.
Thank you. That concludes my items.
Thank you, Mr. Baer. We're going to move on to our Assistant Superintendent for Finance, Ms. Roaring.
Thank you, Madam President. The Division of Finance presents items 10.1 to 10.8 tonight for the board's consideration.
Would any member like to separate out any of these items? Okay, I'd like to entertain a motion, please. Questions or discussion? Yeah, let's start with Mr. Levinstein and then Mr. Stridarn.
So I was wondering if Ms. Roaring can just give us a brief description of the new scholarships that are out for our students that are being approved tonight?
Yes, there are actually two proposed this evening for the board's approval. The first is from the C&I department that would recognize a graduating senior at NFA each year. The second is a scholarship that would recognize 2 students from the dual language program at Fostertown annually.
Thank
you. Mr. Stridarn?
On item 10.7, we have about $6 or $7 million that's being transferred from, I believe, general funds to the contract for excellence. Is that true?
This is a transfer within the general fund. The contract for excellence is a set aside within the district's foundation aid. As part of the audit that the board received earlier this year, it was identified that we needed to establish separate account codes, which we had already done, to account for the salaries that are charged to the CFRE. And this resolution shifts the funds from their original budgeted code to where they need to be now.
The new budget that we're creating, is this item going to be categorized the way it's being transferred?
The new budget that's being created for next year will show those expenses from its origination.
So this is not creating a surplus. This is using the funds that were already budgeted and approved from last year.
So this is all happening within the 22-23 fiscal year. It is moving from specific salary codes into new salary codes that are designated specifically for C4E as prescribed by SED.
Thank you.
Any other questions or comments on these items? Roll call, Ms. Clerk.
Mr. DeRay? Yes. Mr. Lamar?
Yes.
Mr. Levinstein?
Yes.
Ms. Mineo?
Yes.
Mr. Straight Iron?
Yes.
Thank you, Madam President. That concludes my items.
Thank you, Ms. Roaring. We're going to move on to our Assistant Superintendent for Human Resources, Mr. McLemore.
Thank you, Madam President. On the Human Resources agenda, I have items 11.1 through 11.14 for your consideration on tonight.
Would any member like to separate out any of these items? Okay, I'd like to entertain a motion, please. Questions or discussion? Roll call, Ms. Clerk.
Mr. Lamar?
Yes.
Mr. Levinstein?
Yes.
Ms. Mineo?
Yes.
Mr. Straight Iron?
Yes.
Mr. DeRay?
Thank you, Madam President. That concludes my items.
Thank you, Mr. McLemore. We're going to now go to the Clerk of the Board, Ms. Novotny.
I have 2 agenda items this evening. First item is the approval of minutes from the March 1st, 2023 regular meeting.
I'd like to entertain a motion, please. Questions or discussion? Roll call.
Mr. Levinstein?
Yes.
Ms. Mineo?
Yes.
Mr. Straight Iron?
Yes.
Mr. DeRay? Mr. Lamar?
Yes.
My next agenda item is the potential Board of Education candidate packets. The Board of Education packets for potential candidates to run for the board are now available. Please contact my office for more information. There are 3 seats available for a 3-year term and 1 seat available for a 1-year term. The trustees whose terms will be available are Ms. Burton, Mr. Levinstein, Ms. Mineo, Mr. Walker. That concludes my agenda items. Madam
Thank you, Ms. Novotny. We're really at the end here. I'd like to entertain a motion to adjourn this meeting, please. Roll call, Ms. Clerk.
Ms. Mineo?
Yes.
Mrs. Straight Iron? Mr. DeRay? Mr. Lamar? Mr. Levinstein?
Thank you, everyone, and have a nice evening. Drive carefully.